Well, I'm going to start by letting everybody know here that I was destined to sell strawberries for a living. I grew up in a small town in southern Oregon called Klamath Falls. Maybe some of you driven on the way through to somewhere else. And here's a picture of me as a little girl in my dad's yard. He always had a big garden, and he always included a strawberry patch for me, and that's where my love affair with strawberries began. So I had this little system. It was my job to go out and dip the strawberries. So I'd go out with my bucket, and it was something like, you know, one for the bucket, two for me, one for the bucket, two for me. And I believe that being an entrepreneur is something that you are. It's something that's in your blood, not something that you can become. You were born this way. And a while back, my dad told me this story about some kids in this little neighborhood where I grew up that has led me to believe that I am definitely not going to be the last entrepreneur out of that little neighborhood. It was a really, really hot day. It gets really hot there in the summer. And he went out to mow his yard, and he noticed the kids across the street had a lemonade stand. And the sign said, 10 cents, all you can drink. I thought, wow, that sounds like a really good deal. I'm going to take advantage of that as soon as I'm done mowing the lawn. So sure enough, an hour and a half later, he's hot and sweaty, and he goes in the house, and he gets a dime, and he goes across the street, and he lays down his dime. And they poured him up one of those little tiny pixie cups, the little ones like in the bathroom full of lemonade. So he quickly drank it down, and he set down his empty cup, and he said, well, I'll have some more, sir. They said, well, that'll be another dime. He goes, well, wait a minute, your sign clearly says 10 cents, all you can drink. And they go, yeah, and for 10 cents, that's all you can drink. Those kids had a little gimmick, you know, something a little different than everybody else. So I graduated from the same high school that my grandmother did. And here's a picture of me on my graduation day. I was with my boyfriend at the time, this guy named Shari Fitzpatrick. I would have married him that day. Girls, I was madly in love. And I knew he was the guy for me. I didn't need to look any further. But God had different plans for me. He was going to start teaching me patience. And he would make me wait for 10 years until I became his wife. So Clay was 4 years older than me and had wild oats to sow, and he broke my heart. And out of sight, out of mind works really well for me. So I moved up north and went to school, to college in Eugene for a couple of years. But I'm going to admit to you today, I'm not much of a school girl. I hate sitting behind a desk. I was ready to get out into the real world and learn from real life experiences. So when my older brother Rick invited me to move to Los Angeles and work for his mortgage firm, I couldn't pack fast enough. It was there in Los Angeles that I realized the importance of being passionate about what you do. See, my sister-in-law Emily is this amazing cook and caterer, and she would make all these fancy desserts for my brother to take into his real estate agent offices that he was calling on. Well, when I moved to LA, it was 1985, interest rates had just plummeted for the first time in a long time. Remember, they'd been up to like 19%, and now they're down around the 6 and 7% level, and he was so busy. So he had 20 top offices, and he gave me his bottom 10. Well, all these people still expected all this fancy goo at the holidays, and they were my offices now. So Emily was gracious enough to share her recipes with me, and we'd buy the ingredients together and we'd make everything together. And she's the one that taught me how to dip my beloved berries in chocolate. I loved it, and it became a hobby. And I didn't wait for the holidays to come around. I took the berries in to the real estate agents almost every time I called on their offices. Developed another great system. I'd bring them berries, they'd give me mortgage loans, and be both really happy. So I believe that when you add hard work together with passion, anything is possible, and that is when dreams can become reality. So I found myself in Sacramento. I decided, after 4 years in LA, and very successful there, but I wasn't passionate about what I was doing. I liked working with numbers and doing mortgage loans, and I learned a lot, but I started thinking about how much time we spend at work, or worrying about work, or preparing for work, that if you don't really love what you do, and you're selling yourself short, and life is short. So again, I found myself in Sacramento. I decided it would be the perfect town to start my berry idea business in. Number one, I was a little homesick. I was a little further north, a little closer to home. And that old boyfriend, Shari Fitzpatrick, well, he had moved to Sacramento. Well, I was in LA. And guys, if Clay was here today, he'd tell you that I was stalking him. But girls, I know you believe me when I tell you it's just not true. So I got a $1,500 cash advance on a credit card. And my one-bedroom apartment over here on Folsom, it was Fulton Avenue. I started, and I took my hobby of dipping berries, and I started a business. I had absolutely no business experience, no business education, but I had $1,500 and a lot of passion and a dream of doing something that I love for a living. So I really had my work cut out for me because nobody had ever sent somebody a chocolate dipped strawberry as a gift before, ever. I mean, they had been chocolate dipping strawberries in fancy hotels before I was even born, but it was just a confection. And so I had a hard time trying to educate my customers on what I did. They're like, you do what? You do what with them? So I thought, well, so I started telling people, I'm just like a florist, okay? You need a gift shipped or delivered, something pretty. You call us up, we put a message on it, and we send it out. Oh. So I remember my first repeat customer, he called me up, and he said, Shari, I sent my wife your basket of berries, and she loved them. So now what can I send her? Like, oh, well, time to start developing the product line. So I thought, well, I keep telling people my strawberries are like a florist, so maybe I can make my strawberries to actually look like flowers. So I developed a strawberry rose bouquet. Each strawberry is on a handmade rose stem with fern and baby's breath in a long, elegant gold rose box. They were so unique, I was able to get them patented. And this is a little drawing that I had to have drawn up for Washington, D.C. But I was able to get a patent on my unique strawberry roses. I had a lot of fun marketing the roses over the years to the guys. I brought a sample of one of my single strawberry roses. We sold them like this in 6 or a dozen. I brought this one for my sweet friend Andrea. One year, you know, everybody wants to know what's new. So one Valentine's Day, I said, we're going to have a 2 dozen rose bouquet this year. It was like 5 feet long and weighed like 30 pounds. And I came out to my staff and I said, we're going to call this the yes bouquet. If he gets this for her for Valentine's Day, no matter what his question is, the answer is going to be yes. Right? And then I started hearing the women are tired of getting traditional fresh flowers because they seem to die so quickly. They don't even get to enjoy them very long. So the next year I started telling the guys, look it, girls are tired of fresh flowers. If you get her my strawberry roses, they look pretty like flowers, but she can eat them too, and she can wear them around on her hips for like 3 months. So then, back to everybody wants to know what's new. Another product that I developed came from my inspiration, was inspired by my love of caramel apples. I love caramel apples, especially when they have chocolate on them too, man. But they're so big, and they're messy, and they get all over your face, and they start turning brown, and you try to find someone to share it with, you know. And I thought, why not have a nice, neat slice, individual slice of chocolate caramel apple that you could eat nice and neatly at your leisure. So it's a slice of tart Granny Smith with caramel and dipped in chocolate. The white one has cinnamon on it. Tastes like apple pie. But I was having a hard time coming up with a name for them. I think when we name our companies and we name our products, we want something really catchy, easy to remember, trademarkable if you can. And I was having the hardest time. And my son Hogan, who was 13 at the time, he comes up to me and he says, Mom, I've got the name for your new caramel apples. I said, what? He said, call them wedgies. It'll be the best wedgie they've ever had in their life. So we did. So I brought a box of wedgies today because I thought, how fun would it be today at the inTouch luncheon in front of all of you to give Roy a wedgie? Enjoy them. So again, I've never taken a business class. I just like being innovative and creative, and my basic, I just call it like a business 101. I had 3 basic rules, and the number 1 was to always put out a first-class, top-quality product or service, the best that you can, and follow it up with a 100% guarantee. And the second thing is to have excellent customer service. Just take excellent care of your customers. One of my first jobs was working in this family-owned department store up in Oregon when I was in high school, and their number 1 rule was that the customer is always right. You never argue with the customer, no matter how wrong they are. They're always right in your eyes. You never argue with the customer, especially in front of another customer. And then the last thing is to take great care of our employees. I've never asked my employees to do anything that I haven't done or wouldn't do. And I once read that our employees will never take better care of our customers than we take care of them. So that was always really important to me. So I remembered over the years why I got into the berry business. You know, there's always difficult times like Valentine's Day and so forth, but I always remembered the importance of having fun and building fun in with what I did. So when I started marketing nationally, I'm a huge game show queen. I love game shows, and I contacted Harry Friedman, the producer of the show. He happened to be a customer of mine. He loved the berries, so he'd invite me to Sony Studios like this, and they'd tape 3 shows, and I'd get up there and tell my story, and he'd let me pretend like I was Vanna White and have some fun. And then when Willie Nelson came to town, turns out he was a customer too, and I got to go on Willie's bus. And every time I see this picture, I think, why didn't I braid my hair? What was I thinking? And I have to report today, unfortunately, that the rumors about Willie's bus are true. I'll never forget Art Savage, late great Art Savage, owner of the River Cats. And he and I were the only ones that got to go on the bus, and he was behind me, very conservative in his suit and everything. And they opened the door for us to come in. There was like, I was so embarrassed. And then it turned out that Oprah really liked my berries too, and we were featured in her favorite things in her magazine. That was a lot of fun. So my 4th year in business, Clay and I got married. I got my man, and we wanted to start a family right away. And things were a little hectic, and I'm so grateful that during this time in my life I became a Christian. And I learned the importance of having my priorities in the right order. My faith has always come first, and then my family, and then work last. I learned that if I always put my family first, all that guilt of juggling went away because they were always number 1. I can remember my pastor told me, Shari, I've never heard of anybody on their deathbed ever saying they wish they had spent more time at the office. And I never ever forgot that. So times were hectic, but I always took the boys with me to work as much as I could. Here's my first son, Paxton, in his berry suit. He's the only little boy in the world that had an excuse to wear a berry suit. I recently spoke at William Jessup in November, and he just applied to William Jessup. And so when I had this up there, I said, by the way, if there's any admissions faculty here today, he's just applied, and I've got a little gift for you if you come up and talk to me afterwards. And then this is my son Hogan in his Get Her Dip t-shirt. Against all family labor laws. We worked at the state fair every year. He's a great worker. And this past year, Hogan at age 18 ran and managed our state fair booth 30 days straight, head down working, never complained at one time. He's an amazing worker. And then the boys and I have some traditions. This is my youngest son, Max, in his class this last May. Every May I would come to the boys' classrooms with melted chocolate and fruit, and they'd have a good time and celebrate the end of the year. So I've always been a guerrilla marketer, basically having to use, very low-cost, unconventional ways to market my business. I've never had a big budget, so I've had to get creative. So when we started our rollout of our national business, I didn't know where to start. How do I market my berries on a national level with a very small budget? And several people came up to me and they said, you should be in that Sky Mall magazine. You know, that one with all the funky, expensive gadgets on it on the planes, everybody. You need to be in that magazine. So I called their corporate headquarters down in Phoenix, and I told them I would like to have my product in your magazine. Can you tell me what is your least expensive ad? And they go, oh, hold on a minute. You can't just be in our magazine. You have to send us a sample of your product. We have to qualify you. Okay. So I sent out a box right away. So they received a box of my berries the next day, and I got a phone call. And they said, okay, you can be in our magazine. In fact, we think you're going to do really, really well in it. Once again, I felt myself prodding. Can you tell me what's your least expensive ad? And they said, well, we have this little tiny 1/8 of the page ad way in the back of the magazine. It's a quarterly commitment, and you've got to be in all 20 airlines. And our prices start at $21,000. I mean, this was like 10 years ago. I'm like, what? But I don't take no easily for an answer. So I started thinking, how can we get this to work? So I came back to them and I said, look, do a deal with me, just 1 quarter. Instead of charging me $21,000, just charge me $7,000. Take a 25% cut of every order I get. If you think I'm going to do that, well, that way you'll still get your money and I can test out your magazine. Well, they laughed. They said, we've never done a deal like that. We will never do a deal like that. In fact, we can't do a deal like that. So I graciously hung up the phone and I told them I would continue to try to figure out a way to be in their magazine. Well, to my surprise, 2 months later, they chose my berries as their annual holiday corporate gift. They sent me this order. It was beautiful. It's like 150 orders going to top CEOs of corporations, CEOs of airlines. I didn't complain. I thought it was a little weird, though. They're a gift magazine. They could have given a nice kudo order to a client in their magazine, but they chose my berries. So we got the berries out, and when the berries started to arrive, they were inundated with thank you notes, emails. People were calling them up. They had never before ever experienced a reaction to an order and a gift like this ever before. So I got another phone call. They said, okay, we'll do the deal. But guess what? We weren't on 1/8 of a page, way in the back of the magazine. Oh, I forgot to tell you about my boys. I'll get that. We were on the front cover. And when you where's my marketing girl? Where's Jennifer? And when you opened it up, we were on the top right-hand read, half page in the front. And over the years, this relationship with Sky Mall became priceless because we didn't get just one cover, but a second cover at the holidays. And eventually, when TV Guide was acquired by Sky Mall, they picked one of their vendors, and my berries were selected to promote their new Just Shoot Me show on the front of one of their issues. So never take no easily for an answer, and never forget if there's a will, there's a way. I'm going to go back and show you my cute boys. So this is Paxton when he was little at a fundraiser, a small intimate fundraiser we did with Alec Baldwin up at Paws. And after this picture was taken, to thank me for being there and giving berries to everybody, Alec pulled me over by my left arm and he gave me a big old wet cheek kiss right here. And as he walked away, I could still feel the wetness. And I'm like, ooh, I've heard of this before. I'm not washing this one off. So I got home, and there's Clay. We've all seen it, girls. He's in the recliner with the remote. And I jumped between him, the TV, and I announced, I've got Alec Baldwin's dried spit on my left cheek. He's like, what? Is innocent, had Paxton with me. So speaking of airlines, when I was starting early building my board of directors and doing the national rollout, Debbie Fields came to town to do a book signing, you know, from Mrs. Fields Cookies. And I can't remember why I couldn't go, but I knew that I had to get one of my strawberry rose bouquets to her when she was in town. So one of my staff members went and stood in a long line and gave them to her, and she went crazy over them. She called me up and she said my berries had a better chance of success than her cookies ever did. She joined our advisory board, and she invited me to go to her house in Memphis and spend the day with her. So I went, and I got to sit in her kitchen and pick her brain all day. It was wonderful. But one of the things she told me, and it was great because I got to go to Mrs. Fields' house in the morning and Elvis's house at night. It was a fun day. But one of the things she told me, how she marketed her cookies in the early days, is every time she flew, she would take cookies for the whole plane. Of course, this is before 9/11. So I thought, I can do that. So I started taking my chocolate berries for the entire flight. I find out what size of plane I'm on every time, and it was great. They put you in first class right away, and your friend too. And on this one particular flight from Las Vegas to New York City, I had 350 berries with me in first class, and we decided that after the movie would be the best time to serve the berries because everybody's kind of anxious. There's still an hour to New York, and that'd be a good time to serve the berries. So during the movie, they were asking me, they wanted to hear my story, how I got into the berry business, and so I was telling them. And one of the things that I told them is that when I was a young girl and in my teens, my first dream was I wanted to be a flight attendant. Come on, girls, let's see. How many of us wanted to be a flight attendant? See? I wanted to be a flight attendant. Well, later, I figured out I just like to travel and I want to get the hell off the plane. But on this flight, so what they did was they put my berries all over that cart, and they put their outfit on me, and they taught me how to use that brake thing. And they sent me down the aisle, and I got to be a flight attendant. So that was some good fun there. Well, in about my 9th year, the fun started stopping a little bit. Business was booming, and I was overwhelmed. I had 2 retail stores, a factory, 2 little boys, and a 3rd one on the way. And I didn't have any technology in my company, and there was this brand new thing called the internet. And I wanted to figure it out and figure out a way that I could ship my berries on the internet all over the country. So when I was approached by a young entrepreneur, corporate lawyer that promised me the deal of a lifetime, I went all in immediately. I was so grateful to have a partner to help me build this up from what I had built up over the last 9 years. And what I didn't do is my due diligence, and I definitely didn't understand the 51% rule very well. And it took me about a year to realize that I had trusted the wrong person. And for the next 10 years, I would be chipped away at, and chipped away at, and bullied and chipped away at, until I fell below that golden line of 51%, and I lost control of my company. At that point, the board of directors and a new CEO they brought in took over and did everything the way that I would not have done. And eventually, they pretty much got the company to a bankrupt level by bringing on a lot of debt and not doing the things the way that I would have. And they ended up selling the company off to San Diego-based Pro Flowers for pennies on the dollar. And overnight, 22 years of blood, sweat, and tears was gone. I lost my company. And it was like losing one of my boys. You know, I gave birth to it, I created it, and built it up over all these years, and it was just gone. But during this time, you know, I've become stronger, and I've come to understand what it means that we truly become stronger and we learn the most during the difficult times in our life. When we're in the trenches and we have to dig ourselves out. Not when, you know, when we're footloose and fancy free and don't have a care in the world, but when times are difficult. And I also came to realize that dipping strawberries in chocolate is what I do. It's not who I am. And that disappointments in life are unavoidable, but discouragement is a choice. And it turns out that God is much more interested in my character than my comfort, and that beauty really can come from brokenness. I read an article, again during this time of grieving and healing and figuring out what to do with the rest of my life, and this woman had done this story about successful entrepreneurs. And she wanted to dig in and do research to find out if there was common denominators amongst many of them that we may not obviously see what it is. And what she reported is that the majority of all successful entrepreneurs have their biggest success right after their biggest failure. And that was pure proof to me that entrepreneurs are just never quitters. And today I have no unforgiveness against the guys that did this to me. I think unforgiveness is really disabling, and I've learned the importance of forgiving. You have to forgive in order to heal and move forward. And I heard this little riddle from my Bible study teacher. She said, unforgiveness does more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than the object on which it is poured. So you've got to heal in order to move on. And I decided that I needed to respond rightly to what God allows to happen in my life. So I started keeping a journal, and I clung on to it like the cross, and I kept it with me everywhere it goes. It's just a ragged mess. But when I felt myself and my mental just start slipping, I could easily find a scripture or a prayer or a quote from somebody that would lift me right back up and remember all of God's promises. One of the prayers was a serenity prayer my pastor's wife hooked me onto. And we have all heard the first paragraph, but the serenity prayer actually has 4 paragraphs. And the second paragraph says, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, and accepting hardship as the pathway to peace. Hardship is a pathway to peace. That's hard to get, but when you're there, you understand that you're strengthened and you're pruned, and that's when you're refined like gold and you learn the most. One of my favorite scriptures in my journal is from James 1:24. Whenever trouble comes your way, let it be an opportunity for joy. For when your faith is tested, endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when endurance is fully developed, you will be strong in character and ready for anything. So that was some powerful stuff. So after a couple of years of grieving and figuring out what I want to do, I started to take my own advice and remembering that I'll only search out opportunities and business and ventures that I'm passionate about and that I enjoy. So about 9 years ago, I moved my family up to the Fairplay wine region. It's about an hour up the hill, south of Apple Hill, and it's beautiful vineyards all around, and we moved up there. And so when in Rome, I met several great winemakers I've become friends with, and they decided I needed my own wine label. So today I have my own wine label called Shari's Grand Reserve, and yes, I dip it in chocolate too. The bottle is shrink wrapped, and it's dipped in chocolate with a zip cord and directions. One of my customers called me up and he said, Shari, I love your new chocolate dip bottle of wine. You can wake up with a cavity and a hangover at the same time. Like, can I use that? That's really good. So today it's in all Total Wine stores. You can go in and get it regular or chocolate dipped. And I've been teaching some really fun chocolate and wine dipping classes, and I've got some flyers on that. 2 weeks ago today, I taught one right here in a room for Roy's staff, and they're a lot of fun, and we do that a long time. And then I'm a huge fan of the NBA. And I knew, this is me and my favorite player, Big Baby DeMarcus Cousins, in the locker room. I'd brought the team a big, huge tray of berries. And this was before the game. And I know it looks like I'm standing in a hole, but I'm not. I have my whole body completely wrapped around him. My friend Grant Napier got me some media passes so I could go anywhere, and he took this picture. And but DeMarcus was eating one after another, fast as he could, and I couldn't believe it. So as we're leaving, I asked Grant, "Are they supposed to eat stuff like that before the game?" And Grant goes, "Oh, he's an animal. It doesn't matter." I'm like, okay. So I went and I got in my seat, and I'm watching the game, and in the first quarter, my DeMarcus steals the ball, and he's running coast to coast down the court, and he slam dunks the ball, and the whole crowd goes crazy. And I realized, he has my strawberries in his stomach right now. My berries are out on the NBA court playing ball right now. I mean, that's some fun stuff right there. And I just knew my friend and our great mayor, Kevin Johnson, would never let Anaheim or Seattle or those insensitive Maloofs take our kings from us. Well, about the time I lost my company, God gave me a gift. I'd been working on my book, and he gave me a book deal with Pelican Publishing. They published it in hardcover. It was in every Barnes & Noble overnight. And they sent me on a tour, signing tour. And for 15 years, I've been speaking on my berries and entrepreneurship as a way to market my berries. But I started taking my speaking more serious, and I've been traveling the country encouraging people to follow their dreams, never give up. But my book, Buried in Chocolate, was published, and it's a dozen chapters, like a dozen berries in one of my most popular gift boxes. And each one starts with a food story and actually ends with a recipe, including how to make your own perfect strawberries at home. But it's a business book. It's slated, it's under entrepreneurship in the business category. But I was very clear with my publisher. It was important for me to be able to share my faith throughout the book, and so it is. And today my book is inspiring me back. I constantly get letters and emails and messages from people all over the country and now the world. It's a hit in the Philippines. I was exchange student in the Philippines, so it's going around there. My SEO guy's there. So anyways, I got an email one night. It was late on a Saturday night, and I had a million boys in my house, and I was going to bed, and I was checking my smartphone just to see if I had any messages that looked interesting before I went to bed. And this one subject line in all uppercase letters with exclamation points said, "You saved my life." I thought, was that a joke? Or I got to read it. So I opened it up. It was from this young girl. Her nickname is Neat. And I found her online later. She's in North Carolina. And she proceeded in kind of a roundabout way to tell me that she was living her life in a way that was not right. And someone that cared about her came alongside her and gave her a copy of my book. All right, where's my napkin? Okay, he's right. The more I tell, and she said that he wanted her to learn how to market her mind and not her body. And she told me that she left human trafficking because of my book inspired her to open up her own cupcake bakery. She told me that my book was her business school. As a little girl, Neat loved to watch her aunt bake. And so she left human trafficking and opened up her own cupcake bakery. And today, I'm keeping in touch with her, and she sends me articles online. People are writing stories about her. She's winning awards for helping other girls leave human trafficking. She gives them a copy of my book and helps them open up their own cupcake bakery. So, yes, he is inspiring me back. So in my book, I encourage people just to start. Maybe there's a new business or a new product line or a hobby or something in your life that you just can't get started on. Maybe you're afraid to start, you don't know how to start. A lot of people never start because they're afraid someone's going to steal their idea. But let me tell you, just start. Start small. Bigger is not always better. Get some business cards made. Do trade. Start with your family members, but just start. Because just like famous hockey player Wayne Gretzky once said, you're always going to miss 100% of the shots that you never take. So you don't want to be in your 90s and have those what ifs. So just go for it and just start, and that's an inspiration that you can find in my book. I don't watch a whole lot of TV except game shows and the NBA. We've already established that. But last year I really wanted to watch Dancing with the Stars because Winona Judd was on there, and I'm a huge fan. And I wanted to see if she could dance. Well, turns out my girl can sing a lot better than she can dance. But anyway, before she got booted off, she had said she inspires a lot of women. They come to her for inspiration, and what she always tells them is that sometimes you got to go out on a limb because that is where the fruit is. So always remember that, and it kind of mixes in with the whole fruit thing. So yes, there's a big chapter on mistakes in my book, but I think we can learn from mistakes. I learned from a mistake. You know, if you learn from it, then it's not such a bad mistake. And one year on Valentine's Day, we had a really rough year. I just opened a new store downtown in the Wells Fargo building. The whole building's filled with lawyers. And we We took too many orders. Should have cut off orders, and we got too late of a start. The berries were flying out the door as fast as we were making them, and we couldn't get production, so nobody got to go home all night. I was 4 months pregnant with Hogan. I was sick. We all worked a 36-hour shift straight, which meant we come in on the 13th at 6 a.m. We worked all day, all night until 7 o'clock on the 14th. It was really rough. And if that wasn't bad enough, a lot of the people didn't get their, 100 people didn't get their orders, which was a big amount for me back then. I trusted this delivery company that I shouldn't have. I put too many eggs in one basket. And this lawyer, his wife, downtown in our new building, she didn't get her berries. And he went down and chewed out my staff and screamed and yelled and made a scene. And so I was so upset. What I did was I sent everybody a letter right away. They got it the next day. I gave them back their money. We redelivered the products perfectly on the 15th. And then I gave them their money back too, so triple back with a note, I hope they would ever trust me again. Well, years later, my husband's in construction, he builds pools. He was building a pool for this guy, and it turned out to be that lawyer. He's like, "You're kidding, that's your wife?" Clay goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You know, I wasn't gonna ever order from her again, and I was gonna tell everybody to never order from her again, but the way she handled it, I've been her #1 company, customer and this and that forever." So anyways, the other thing that I wanted to share was, there's your just start. It's so important to surround ourselves with wisdom and other professionals, because when we do, we get their experience and their expertise added onto our efforts. And when I went to do my book, I found Jan King, and if anybody wants to publish a book, whether it's traditional like mine or self-publishing, I just always like to give this little trinket before I close, because it's so important. I talked about my book. It's also available now dipped in chocolate. When I first saw my book, I thought it was so beautiful, but then my innovative mind started going, I thought, how could we have made it even better? I mean, could we have done like a scratch and sniff? So like smelled like those berries? Or better yet, my favorite movie in the whole world is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Remember the lickable wallpaper? What if it could have really tasted like that? So anyways, it was just a matter of time that I would dip my books in chocolate. They're shrink wrapped just like the wine. They're dipped. It's the first book in the world with calories. The reader can eat my chocolate and read my story at the same time. So today, when life gives you lemons, you make the best lemonade stand you possibly can. And when life gives you berries, you dip them in chocolate. I do have a new berry line at Buried in Chocolate, which is the title of my book. And I would be a horrible entrepreneur if I closed up here today and didn't remind everybody that Valentine's Day is right around the corner. We have a special code on our website. If you put IMS, you get a special discount on our website all year. And Roy has graciously purchased a book for everybody today. So make sure you get those. I'm happy to put your name in it, your wife's name if you'd like. And I have a huge assortment of my premium red wines dipped in chocolate in my book. And I take credit cards. So as I close, I just wanted to remind everybody to never forget what's most important. Clay and I are getting ready to celebrate our 22nd wedding anniversary. Thank you. He says it feels like 30. But my hope for all of you is that you find sweet, very sweet success in both your personal and your business endeavors, but never ever forget that there's a big difference between making a living and making a life. It's a huge honor for Berry Dipper to be here today. Thank you so much.